Everyone. Sorry for the prepare you for going live. I'll have to look over my rig afterwards, see what went wrong here. Anyway, we'll go through the changes in the 2020 Scrum Guide today, and I'll tell you about the most significant changes in the Scrum Guide. And as we do this, I'll ask you to answer a few questions by basically just moving your cursor on this Miro board where I see a lot of you are already in. So let's jump straight into it. New Scrum Guide was released the day before yesterday, so on the November 18th. Last version was the 2017 version, so it's like 3 years ago since this was last updated. So there are some significant changes here. So let's see here if I'll just do it like this. Actually, I was planning to open these up one at a time, but it's going to be slightly problematic to do. So we'll just do it like this. And on the left-hand side of my screen share, you'll see the different slides or different points we're going to. And if you just zoom out, you'll see all of them at once, but we'll go through them one at a time. And we'll start with the first and the most maybe obvious one when you look at the new Scrum Guide. It's short and simple. It's shorter than the 2017 version, actually 4 pages shorter. If you skip the pages that you don't really need to read, table of contents, forward, end notes, stuff like that, it's actually just 10 pages to read these days. So it's really short, and they've also made the language simpler. So it's much easier to understand, and it's not, there are no really complex sentences or anything like that. So makes it easy to read. So that's one of that's kind of the first, that's maybe the first big change that you'll notice in this. Second change is that the Scrum Guide has become less prescriptive. So they don't, this has been a recurring pattern version by version. They've removed stuff that they feel doesn't necessarily have to be in the Scrum Guide. So 2 examples of this, of stuff that they have removed in the 2020 Scrum Guide is, for instance, the 3 questions that you have that used to be there for the daily Scrum. They're now removed. Instead, you're kind of supposed to talk about how your work is, how you're progressing towards your sprint goal, and that's basically it. So there's no. It used to say that these are the 3 questions you should answer during sprint planning, and it doesn't really say that anymore. It's kind of more or less up to the team how to discuss how we're progressing towards the sprint goal. Also, there used to be a reference about how much time you should spend on backlog refinement. They've removed that as well. I believe it does say that you should refine your backlog, but it doesn't really tell you how much time to spend on that. So, and this is the kind of first place where I would like to ask you a question then. Removing these things, the 3 questions, and no guidance on how much time to spend on backlog refinement. On a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel about this? So just please move your cursor to the number bar in the. Woohoo! Let's see. Mostly positive, it would seem. Sweet. Okay. Thank you. Right. Also, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and one of our moderators will call it out. Okay, so less prescriptive. Most people seem to agree that this is a good thing. Let's move on to the next one. Scrum Guide has become generic. All previous versions have talked about software development in one way or another. It mentions software development. It says that your, the software was kind of in there. It's not really surprising because that's where Scrum has its roots. It comes from software development projects and stuff. But this time around in the 2020 version, everything it's all generic, so and the intent here obviously is to make it applicable to any domain. So they've removed all the software references. I think if you search for software in the actual Scrum Guide, you'll get maybe one hit, and it's in the foreword where it says that Scrum has its roots in software development. But otherwise, it won't mention software anymore. Also, they try to define a product, what a product is, and because we're no longer in the software domain, what you can see in the bold text here says a product could be a service, a physical product, or something more abstract. So it's, they try to define product, but also open for that, a product could be almost anything. A yes or no question here. Do you think this change will make us see some kind of mass adoption of Scrum outside of software development? Yes or no question. Basically, do you think you will see others start using Scrum because of this change? Even split. Some say yes, some say no. We have a decent bunch of people in the maybe field. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Right, so generic. Next thing. With the 2020 version of the Scrum Guide, there is now only one team, and it's the Scrum Team. It used to be that the Scrum Team consists of the product owner, the Scrum Master, and a development team. This made it, kind of awkward sometimes or confusing when you talked about the team, and it's like, oh, you're talking about the development team or the Scrum Team? Is it the same thing? Stuff like that. Now it's just one team, and it's the Scrum Team. Development team is no longer in there. Instead, they just talk about developers. And developers is, everyone who helps, build this product that we are working on. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not developers in the old sense, someone who, does code. It's anyone who helps us build our product, whatever our product is. And they actually do think they say somewhere in this guide that they use developers as an inclusive term. So, if you help building the product, you're a developer, basically. Question here: how do you feel about this change on a scale from 1 to 10? With just one team, development team, basically being renamed to just developers. People seems to be mostly happy about that change. So I guess that was a good one. I'm pretty happy about that one as well. Right, so speaking about the Scrum Team, another change that at least to me came as a bit of a surprise was that actually there are no roles in Scrum anymore in the Scrum Guide. There used to be that said that Scrum you had 3 different roles: the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers. The word role, if you go to scrumguides.org and open up the Scrum Guide, and you do a text search for the word role, it's not in the Scrum Guide at all. It's been entirely removed. And it has to be a very deliberate change by the authors. What we have instead is 3 accountabilities within the team. The Scrum team is accountable for producing value by working on whatever product they're working on. And as part of doing that, there's also now 3 accountabilities within the team. And they just so happen to be named the exact same thing as the 3 old roles that we used to have. So it's actually still product owner, scrum master, and developers. So it's slightly new word, but it's still 3 accountabilities instead of 3 roles. So this is, and you might you might argue that this is just semantics, potato, but maybe it makes a difference. So yes, no question here. Is this a good change? Yes or no? So there would seem to be a majority in the yes camp, but not everyone is convinced. So let's try the scale from 1 to 10 as well. On a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel about this change? Okay, a bit more even distribution. Okay, thank you. Right, so 3 accountabilities instead of roles. So that's what that's one of the changes. Next change is part of the Scrum Guide that talks about sprint planning, and we have a new topic for sprint planning. It used to be a 2-part thing in the sprint planning. You were supposed to talk about what can be done in the sprint and how will the chosen work get done. But now but also in the 2017 version of the Scrum Guide, they talked a bit about the sprint goal. And now they've made that more explicit by adding a 3rd topic. Okay, so anyway, so we have a sprint. We have a sprint. So we have a new 3rd sprint planning topic. It's the green note here says why is the valuable. So basically, what's the sprint goal, but also that helps us. It's supposed to help us formulate the sprint goal by discussing why is the sprint valuable. It kind of makes sense. We're not doing things just for the purpose of doing stuff. We're supposed to produce value every sprint. So why is the sprint valuable? It's a new topic that goes hand in hand with the 2 other ones, and is apparently supposed to help us formulate the sprint goal. So a yes/no question here. Will this help you in your sprint planning? Will it improve your sprint planning sessions?
So while they answer that, we actually have a couple of questions. One is from our Mihai, where he asked, yes. Would it be a conflict of interest to have all of them in the one team? Mihai, I messed up in terms of for which topic that it was.
So, Mihai, if you can.
Yes, so you mentioned that the roles were removed, right? And yes. Then there are accountability. Is it good to have all those roles or accountabilities into only one team? Wouldn't be a conflict of interest to have the owner with the rest of the team?
Yeah, so that is something that let's say Scrum people, so to speak, have discussed for some time. But but there always been the concept of the Scrum team, and the product owner was part of the Scrum team. So nothing really changed there, I'd say. Whether it's good or bad, well, we could argue about that. But I think the major change here is that they actually removed the concept of the development team, and instead they just say that actually there's a bunch of developers within the Scrum team as well. So yeah.
Okay. So there's also a question here on the topic that we just covered from Benjamin. Sprint goal still there or replaces?
Yes, sprint goal is still there. Very much still there. So the new topic does not replace the sprint goal. Actually, we'll talk about the sprint goal shortly, because it's there are changes relating to that one as well. So we'll get back to sprint goal. Any other questions?
Not for now.
Not for now. Okay. So let's move on to the next big change then, and that is the concept of a product goal. This is a kind of new concept in the Scrum Guide, but still not entirely new. Previous version of the Scrum Guide talked about the product vision. That is no longer mentioned anywhere in the Scrum Guide. Instead, they talk about a product goal. And the product goal is, as my little notes say here, it's a long-term objective for the Scrum team, and you're supposed to fulfill or abandon one objective before taking on the next. So you basically work towards one product goal at a time. So this is your, this is what guides you in your more long-term work. And it's kind of the same as the sprint goal, only sprint goal is for the sprint. It gives you direction and a sense of what we're working towards, the value that we'll realize by fulfilling this goal, and in the sprint, for the sprint goal, that's we have one sprint to kind of reach the sprint goal. The product goal does not have a clear time box, but it's still kind of, it's our guiding star, it tells us where to go with our product, and that will help us, that will guide us in building and maintaining our backlog. Now, this is, and my first reaction to this was that, it's like okay, they renamed the product vision into product goal, but reading them more into the details, actually the product goal is a little bit more focused than I would say the product vision used to be. The vision was kind of, it could be kind of, we're going to rule the world or whatever. We might not ever get there. The product goal, you're supposed to reach that one eventually, and then you should probably start working on another goal. Or by all means, after a while, you might abandon this goal. You say it's no longer important to work towards this goal. Let's work towards something else. But it's supposed to give the Scrum team focus on where to move with the product and make it clear for everyone else in what direction we're heading and why we're doing what we're doing. So product goal. Let's do a yes/no question here. Will this make things better for your team in the form of clarity and stuff? Another yes/no question. Do you think this will make things clearer for your stakeholders? Everyone outside of the team who cares about this. They might care about this. Okay, so basically everyone seems to agree that this is a good idea. A few people don't, but let's see. Okay.
Can I just throw my question in without typing it in the chat first?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So when you talk about the product goal, so I mean, going back to the changes that we now have a product, and you definitely defined your product. So would you say that you would define a bunch of product goals, and at what time should you define your product goals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I honestly don't remember now what this 2020 Scrum Guide says about that. My gut feeling is that this might be, you know, slightly like an other backlog on a higher level that we might start. I don't think that's the kind of idea with this. I don't think the underlying idea is that you should now, you know, kind of start to have and maintain two backlogs, one with, you know, the usual backlog, and then have some much higher level with goals. But on the other hand, you know, it does say you must fulfill one goal or abandon it and before moving on to the next, which kind of implies that you probably have one or two other goals kind of lined up. So yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah, there seems, I mean, looking at this text, it looks like you've done some product goal planning.
Yeah. So let's put it to the crowd here. What are your gut reaction? Kind of yes or no question. Do you think will this result in teams or organizations starting to build kind of a backlog of goals? So yes or no? Do you think they'll? Yeah. So yeah, okay, yeah.
There's also a good point here in the chat. It could be easier to measure and follow up on goals instead of vision.
Yeah.
Of course, the word goal says a little bit more than the word vision.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So let's move on to the last change that in the Scrum Guide that I will cover, and this is a brand new concept in the 2020 Scrum Guide, and it's basically called commitments. All the Scrum artifacts now have something called commitments. So the artifacts is the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the increment. That hasn't changed. Those are the same three artifacts as we've always had. But now we have something called commitments that are tied to these artifacts. Each artifact has one commitment. And actually, this isn't as huge of a change as you might think, because nothing except from the product goal, nothing really new has been introduced here, because it's actually just a very nice way of dealing with the product goal, the sprint goal, and the definition of done. These have always previously in Scrum been, you know, kind of really important things that you should have, but they were not artifacts, and this kind of confused people. You know, you didn't really know, you know, what's the definition of done? Is that an artifact? Is it something else? You know, and I said, yeah, it's important. Now they've tied these. So and basically what they said is when you're working on one of the artifacts, so you're working on your product backlog or your sprint backlog or your increment, you commit to the artifact commitment, and that would be for the product backlog, the commitment is the product goal. For the sprint backlog, the commitment is the sprint goal, and for the increment, you commit to the definition of done. And this actually lines up really nicely with one of the 5 Scrum values of commitment. Which basically says that we commit to the goals of the team. So you know that it kind of fits nicely into that kind of thinking as well. So the concept of commitments is something new, but the actual commitments, the product goal, the sprint goal, and definition of done isn't really that new, in my opinion. Let's have a question. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel about this change? Seem to be mostly positive. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Right, so that's actually all the 9 biggest changes, I'd say, in the 2020 Scrum Guide. There's of course a lot of details in there as well. I really recommend you all to go to scrumguides.org and either download the PDF or read it online. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, there's no Swedish translation yet for those of you who want that. Some languages have translations already, some don't. But just read it in English. I'm sure you can do it.
Question.
Yes.
If the has estimating been changed?
Estimation? No, I don't think that has changed. And they might have, because they simplified the language a bit. It might say, the actual wordings might be slightly different, but I still think it says that basically developers do estimation or something like that. That's basically what it boils down to. Okay. So actually, I would like to ask one last question to all of you. And this is not going to be a yes or no question or a scale from 1 to 10. Instead, what I would like you to do is actually, based on these, we have all these changes in a bit of a circle here. Can you move your cursor to the one change that you felt was the most exciting or important one, whatever, the change that kind of had the biggest, that you right now you feel have the biggest impact on you, or in one way or another? What will affect you most? So let's see. Actually, I do like this to maybe see a bit. Okay. Cool. So yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. So anyway, so those are the biggest changes. There are other changes as well. Small nuances, choices of words, stuff like that, and also with the thing of being more generic and simpler language and everything like that. I really, really recommend you to go download the latest version, read it, see and get into it and determine something. Actually, let's do one last yes or no question. Do you feel that Scrum has changed in this? Yes. So the Scrum Guide changed, but did Scrum actually change due to these changes? I have to zoom in to see. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's pretty much it's kind of what I felt as well. It feels that Scrum is still Scrum. The Scrum Guide changed for sure, but the Scrum is probably still Scrum. So we should be fine, all of us, already doing Scrum. Right, so that's everything I had to share with you today. Do we have any more questions in the chat?
We don't. We just have me playing the moderator and throwing in our LinkedIn page. So yeah. feel free to follow us there. We would really like that. Also, the YouTube channel that this video will end up at. Please help us out by subscribing to that so that we can get a little better URL for us in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
also just one
yes.
question for me. I really want to use this mirror board as well. So how did you like the session that Jesper had for us? So yes, no, maybe. Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. You're so nice, everyone. That's so nice of you. Thank you.
Yes, Julio, I will. So as soon as the recording is done, I will post it online, and I'll paste the URL here in this chat so you can access that.
Yeah. Also, there's I have 15 more minutes. If anyone want to, stay behind and chat or ask questions, feel free.
Yeah, I'll stop the recording now.
Yep. Okay, so someone had a question?
Yes. Did you mention estimation?